Welcome to XYZ Wellness. This is Elisa, and today I'm going to share with you a flow that's going to help us create some heat and some warmth in the body. And we'll probably use a couple of blocks, so if you have some, great. If not, you'll probably be able to get by without them, but sometimes the blocks are really helpful because they help us bring the floor a little bit closer to us. And if you don't have blocks, sometimes you can get a little creative. You might choose to use a couple of books or maybe a sofa cushion, anything that you have that maybe can give you a little bit of height, bringing the floor closer to us. So again, if you don't have blocks, don't worry about it. If you don't have a yoga mat, don't worry about it. You can do this practice just as you are. So really starting the practice wherever you are and making any modifications to fit the space you're in and to fit the way you're feeling today. So to get started, we're going to come into a standing posture, and we'll take a peek down, making sure our feet are about hip distance apart, and we'll have all 10 toes facing the front, and then rolling the shoulders back and down. So we can find a little bit of length. We're rooting down through our feet, allowing the body to rise tall. And when we think about rising tall, it's really helpful to think about that length in the spine. So growing tall from the tailbone to the crown of the head, almost as if you had a string reaching from the top of your head and helping you to lift just a little bit taller. And as we connect our feet to the earth, we might choose to rock back and forth, just a little rocking motion. It doesn't have to be a big movement, just so we can notice if we're carrying more weight in the front, like into the toes or into the heels. And then maybe even a little side to side movement. And this one's really helpful because a lot of times without really paying attention to it, we might lean off to one side. So especially if you're standing at a counter or, cooking at the stove or washing dishes, you might notice that you have a little lean. So being aware of that, and as we rock back and forth and side to side, noticing where we feel a little out of balance, and then where do we feel in balance. And once we get to that place where we're feeling pretty solid, pretty stable, again, letting those shoulders roll back and down, palms facing forward, either allowing those eyes to close or they can soften down towards the earth. And we'll just check in with the body. So again, feeling the feet pressing into the earth, making sure the knees are soft. We'll engage root lock, Mula Bandha. And what that basically means is that we're lifting and engaging through the pelvic floor. And again, those eyes can be just however feels good to you. If it doesn't feel good, shutting the eyes, just letting your gaze rest down towards the floor as we notice the breath. Letting our awareness go inward. Noticing your breath in this moment. Not needing it to be any particular way. And then only if it's comfortable, we can begin to allow the breath to deepen. So inhaling through the nose, letting the belly expand. And then exhaling through the nose, exhaling fully and completely. And we can start to come to a 3-part breath. So as we inhale, letting that in-breath come all the way down to the belly, expanding, and then creating that same expansion through the ribs and the chest. And then as we exhale, reversing that flow, exhaling, emptying first the chest, and then the ribs, and then all the way down to the belly. And if you want to, you could place one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly so you can feel that flow as we let that 3-part breath just slow things down, slowing down the mind and the body. Letting go of expectations and judgments. Letting go of competition. So every time we exhale, just letting go of all those things that no longer serve us. Feeling our feet pressing down into the earth once again, and maybe even lifting the toes, spreading them wide, feeling the arches drawing up away from the ground, drawing energy from the earth and letting the toes come back down to the earth while we still keep that lift in the arches, firming the thighs, keeping that root lock, that engagement of the pelvic floor. And then as you're ready, we'll slowly allow our eyes to open, arriving back in the room. And preparing to add some movement, we're going to inhale, sweeping the arms out, and then only if it feels okay to the shoulders overhead. Exhaling, hands come to the heart. Inhaling, using that full in-breath, that 3-part in-breath. And then the exhale, bringing hands back to heart center. So as we move through this flowing breath, either keeping the arms sweeping out on the exhale, or hands come back to heart center. Maybe experimenting, seeing how those two feel. And as always, if you're caring for any shoulder issues today, we might choose to make that movement a little smaller. So if it feels better, maybe only coming up halfway, doing that. Right now, we're just connecting the mind, the body, and the breath. So we're not worrying about what our movements look like, what our bodies look like. It's all about what does it feel like in your body. We'll do just one more time like this. And exhaling, arms come down alongside the body. And we're going to take a wide step. So if you're facing the top of your mat, you can take a wide step now on the long edge. So facing the long edge. Knees and toes are going towards the corners of the mat. And we're going to start flowing through moon flow. So we'll first bring arms up, finding a 5-pointed star. And then as we exhale, sitting down into a squat. So maybe since we're just starting to warm up, we might not go down very low. And again, if we're caring for shoulders today, we might leave the arm portion out. So if you'd like, we could bring hands to the heart and just finding this little bit of a squat, starting to wake up the hips. And remembering we can add those arms back in if that's appropriate. Inhaling to lift, and then exhaling a little lower. If we're adding those arms, they can come down into cactus arms, or maybe bringing hands down or elbows down towards the ribs, getting some expansion through the chest and the front of the shoulders. But remembering, we're just starting to warm up, so this movement can be as big or as small as we would like. Waking up the legs and the hips, as well as the upper body. And every time we come down, feeling that connection between our feet and the earth, and then pressing down, rooting down to rise tall. And then just one more time like this through our moon flow. And then we'll come to our sun flow. So this time, as we exhale, we'll hinge at the hips, tracing a big, beautiful sun with our arms. Looking up, letting our gaze follow those arms if that feels appropriate. But if we have any neck issues, maybe keeping our gaze forward or down. And as we come into this lowered posture, we're not worrying about how low we get down, and we're not trying to round the spine. We're keeping the spine nice and long. So we're hinging at the hips, keeping head above heart and the heart above the hips. And then when we move through this, we're really aware of our strong core center. So drawing navel in towards the low back rather than letting the belly drop. And we're using that connection with our core, that stability in the core, to lift and lower. So a lot of things happening here as we're warming up. And then just one more of our sun flow. And then we're going to sit into our sun goddess pose. So elbows have a slight little bend, and we'll open, thumbs are reaching towards the back wall. And then inhaling and exhaling, hands come to the space of the heart. We'll walk our feet back into that hip distance, that mountain pose stance. And we're going to flow now through chair pose. So feet are still in line with our hips. We'll take that in breath, bringing arms up as high as feels good, and then exhaling, sitting the hips back and down. Again, if we have any shoulder issues that we're caring for today, we might bring hands to the heart or to the thighs. And then we'll inhale, lifting. Arms are always optional, so maybe choosing to extend them forward. Remembering we can bend those elbows a little bit more. That can help shorten the lever of our arms and make it a little easier on our shoulders as well. Weight of the body is going towards the heel, so we're sitting back into that imaginary chair. So just like squats, we're strengthening the thighs, the glutes. You can experiment with those arms, seeing what makes you happy right now, what feels good in your body. Using that breath to flow, to oxygenate the body. Do just a couple more like this. And you're probably feeling nice and warm right about now. So now we'll all take a stance or take a couple of steps towards the top of our mat. So if you're facing the long edge, maybe joining me now at the top of your mat. And we'll roll those shoulders once again. So finding that mountain pose, finding strength and stability here in our mountain. We'll inhale, bringing palms overhead, letting our gaze go up or forward. And then as we exhale, hinging at the hips, bringing hands to the floor, coming into a forward fold. Knees can be bent here as much as we'd like. So if we have any tightness in the backs of the legs or lower back discomfort, then bending those knees a little more. And we'll shake out the head and neck. Shaking our head no, saying no to any limiting beliefs that might be holding us back. And then nodding our heads yes. Saying yes, I am enough, just as I am. From here, we'll inhale, taking a reverse swan dive. And then exhaling, deep bend in the knees as we hinge at the hips, forward fold. We'll do that just a couple more times. Inhaling to lift. And then exhaling to lower. Inhaling, rising, pressing those feet into the earth. And exhaling, forward fold. So coming back into that forward fold. And we're going to take a step back with the right foot, coming into a high lunge. And then we'll step the left foot back as well, coming into a downward facing dog. So it's our first down dog of the practice. So we're going to keep the knees really bent here, keeping that length in the spine. And then maybe walking our dog, lowering one heel towards the floor as the other knee deeply bends. And then just switching from one side to the other. Starting to wake up the bottoms of the feet and get a little bit more into the backs of the legs, especially the ankles and the Achilles tendons, the calf muscles. From here, we'll lift onto the balls of the feet on an in-breath, and as we exhale, heels come back towards the ground. So back and down as we push the floor away from us. And it doesn't matter if the heels make it all the way down or not. Lifting through that belly, engaging Uddiyana Bandha, drawing navel towards spine. Exhaling, knees come down to the floor. We'll untuck the toes and come into child's pose. In this child's pose, knees can be in alignment with hips, or we could place them towards the outer edges of the mat, making a little more room for the body and allowing the forehead to come down to the floor. And it's okay if our forehead doesn't make it all the way down. We could stack our hands or a block, or again, a pillow or a couch cushion underneath the forehead, really seeing the back of the neck. So if we're letting the head kind of hang in space there, we might be creating tension into the upper back and the back of the neck muscles. So releasing them by allowing that head to rest on something. And from here, we can just rock the brow, rocking from side to side, massaging the middle of the forehead, the place where our third eye is. So that's the place of our intuition and our inner knowledge. Observing any sensations in the body. So that could be the hips or the low back, maybe the ankles or the shoulders. And taking a stretch for the side of the body, we'll inhale looking towards our hands. So if our hands are under our head, we'll walk those hands forward once again, and we'll then walk them over to the left side, maybe onto the floor, keeping the right hip sitting on the heel so we can elongate through the right side of the torso. Inhaling, walking hands across center, over to the right side, finding that lateral flexion for the spine now on the other side of the body. Getting into the ribs and the intercostal muscles. Inhaling, coming back to center. You could choose to stay here in child's pose or maybe lifting back into a downward facing dog. So if knees were wide, we'll bring them back into an alignment with the hips, curl the toes under, and then lifting the hips back into that downward facing dog. From here, we'll add in some movement if that's appropriate. So that could be walking our dog once again, or we might choose to lift one leg straight up, keeping the hips squared, coming into a three-legged dog. We could do this also on hands and knees if that feels more appropriate for right now. And it's any movement or stillness that your body needs right now. So as we're presented with options throughout the entire practice, always selecting whatever feels best to us, honoring our bodies on any given day and in any given moment. And then lowering knees back to the floor. And we're going to come through cat and cow. So taking hands directly underneath shoulders, spreading the fingers wide into starfish fingers. But if we have any wrist discomfort, maybe coming into fist for wrists instead, or down onto forearms. Knees are directly under the hips. And as we inhale, we'll drop the belly, looking forward. Not worrying about tilting the head all the way up or back, just looking to a place that feels comfortable for the neck. As we exhale, we're going to reverse that. So first starting at the tailbone and then lifting one vertebra at a time up towards the sky, letting our gaze come towards the belly button for cat pose. Inhaling, leading with that tailbone and moving one vertebra at a time once again. So it's a nice articulation of the spine as we're moving here, massaging the entire length of the back. Sometimes when we move through this combination, we get into a really quick movement, and you might even notice the head and neck moving first, because a lot of times we move with our eyes, or we let our eyes lead. But challenging ourselves to let that movement be a real gentle articulation, letting the eyes be the last part of the body, or the head be the last part of the body to move. And as we're here on hands and knees, you might add in any other variations that you have in your practice. Sometimes we'll wag our tails like a happy dog, or add in some hip circles. So anything that your body might need right now. You can experiment with hand placement, so maybe taking the hands wider or further up on your mat. Maybe going through a variety of movements as we just work through the spine a little bit, working out any kinks we have in the body right now. And sitting back in a child's pose, any variation that feels good to you right now. As we notice, maybe we feel a little looser in the body, or just noticing any differences from that first child's pose and this one. Staying here if this is feeling good, or we can lift into another downward facing dog, lifting those hips up towards the sky, letting our gaze come back towards the feet, noticing that they're still in alignment with the hips, drawing in through that belly to engage that core, finding that core stability. We'll inhale, and exhaling, looking to the hands. We'll take a walk to the front of our mats, coming into forward fold, softening our knees as we inhale, reverse swan dive. Exhaling, hands come to the space of the heart. And we're getting ready to move using our blocks. So if we do have blocks nearby, or books, or whatever we've decided to use, just having those within reach. We'll take a big in-breath, bringing palms overhead, letting our gaze come up to the thumbs, or we can look forward. As we exhale, hinging forward, bring hands to our blocks if we've got them, and taking them next to the feet. We'll step the left foot back. So right knee is over the ankle. We're in a low lunge. And from here, we're going to walk with our blocks towards the center. So now we're facing the long edge of our mat. Hands are on our blocks. And then as we exhale, crown of the head towards the floor. We're in a wide-legged forward fold now. Knees can still be bent here. Anytime we're in a forward fold, whether it's wide leg like this or in that mountain pose forward fold, we can have the legs, they're a little closer to the body, but we still have the option to bend the knees and should at least have a tiny bit of a bend in the knees. We'll inhale from here, we into a flat back, maybe looking forward or down towards those hands, keeping the spine long from the tailbone to the top of the head. And then exhaling, rounding once again. So we'll do that a few times. Inhaling, lengthening, and exhaling, lowering. So we could be doing this movement with or without the blocks. If you don't have blocks, maybe coming onto fingertips. Exhaling, bowing. Inhaling and exhaling. One more time like this. And then exhaling back down. So again, maybe using those blocks. We're going to this time walk our hands and our feet. So now we're facing the other direction on our mat, coming into our low lunge, or our lunge with our left knee over the ankle. Hands are on blocks or on the floor. And from here, we're going to pivot that rear foot, which is the right foot now, and we're going to bring that right heel onto the mat. We'll walk hands up the front thigh, coming into warrior one pose. We'll square our shoulders towards that left foot, towards the short edge of the mat. Maybe inhaling, arms up. And if those arms are lifted, we'll relax the shoulders back and down. So checking in, noticing if we're letting those shoulders hunch up towards the ears. Right heel is pressing into the earth. And then we'll inhale, opening into warrior two. Arms are wide. And we'll peek down, making sure we can still see that big toe inside of the right knee. Adding in a bow and arrow movement here. We'll reach those arms wide on an in-breath. And then as we exhale, bringing that right arm and the right hand towards the left, and then we'll inhale, opening on that bow. And then exhaling, noticing how we might be feeling this or experiencing this in the torso and the upper body as we create strength in the legs holding this posture. One more time like this. Coming back into that proud, strong warrior two, letting our gaze come out over the left fingertips. Cartwheeling the arms, we'll bring hands back to the blocks, and we're going to walk in the reverse direction now. So bringing hands and blocks over to center. Our feet are in alignment with each other, so they're parallel. And changing it up a little bit this time, we're going to bring both hands over to the left leg. So hands can come behind either thigh or calf muscle, crown of the head reaching down, and we might notice that into the inner thigh or the back of the leg. Taking one more breath here. And then we'll walk hands through center over to the other side. Maybe noticing if one side feels a little tighter or a little looser than the other. Always just being aware of the sensations in the body, making any adjustments that you might want to make. And we'll inhale, coming back to center. Hands come to the blocks. And now we're going to walk once again toward that front. So now right knee is over the ankle. We're in that lunge, that runner's lunge. And we'll pivot on the back foot. So we're setting up for warrior one once again. Hands come up that front thigh, making any adjustments with the legs. So if we need to step that rear foot a little bit out more to the side to feel a little more stable or a little bit more forward, we can do that. And then we'll inhale, coming into warrior one. First, finding our strength and stability in this pose. Letting both feet root down equally into the earth. And then on our in-breath, we'll open up, coming into warrior two. Maybe separating those feet a little bit wider, letting our gaze come out over the right fingertips. Adding in our bow and arrow. So once again, reaching wide on the inhale. Hands are reaching far apart. And then as we exhale, back hand comes forward. Inhaling to open. Moving with the breath. Feeling that strength in our legs as we move through this for the upper body. Keeping that core nice and stable. And just noticing how you're experiencing this into the side body. One more like this. Inhaling. And then coming back into that warrior two. We'll cartwheel the arms, coming into our runner's lunge once again. And then stepping the left foot forward to meet the right. Coming into our forward fold. Finding a ragdoll. Maybe holding on to elbows. Or letting fingertips trace the floor. Again, just noticing. Maybe you feel a little more warmth in the backs of the legs or the lower back. Bring hands to the floor. We'll walk both feet back into a downward facing dog. Adding some movement or lowering knees down to the floor. So again, maybe choosing a three-legged dog. This time we could open the hip a little bit more out to the side, letting the heel come towards the glute. Or we could stay there, walking our dog, pedaling out the feet. And stillness is always an option as well. If we are adding in some movement, just evening out the sides of the body. So if we've done something to one side of the body, then adding it to the other. And then we'll make our way back into a child's pose. Knees come to the floor. And then lowering hips down towards the heels. This time we'll bring hands towards the feet, releasing the shoulders. Pausing to check in with the breath, listening to the body. Being very aware of how we're feeling in this present moment. Bringing hands forward, we'll shift our weight onto our bottoms, coming into first a seated posture. So you might choose to sit up on your block or on a bolster, and in fact, I'm going to grab mine. So a block or anything that we can sit on is very helpful to protect the lower back. So if you ever notice when you're in a seated posture, especially on the floor, that you're rounding back, it can be very helpful to sit on something to help us find that natural curve of the spine. And then bringing soles of the feet together, we'll come into a butterfly pose. Hands can be at the ankles or anywhere along the legs, allowing the inner thighs and the hips to find a natural opening. We're not trying to force anything or make anything happen here. It's just about allowing. We can let our gaze come down towards the floor. We can close our eyes once again, turning our awareness inward. Noticing your breath. We'll stay here for just another moment or two. And then allowing eyes to open if they were closed. We'll bring knees together and we'll extend the legs coming into staff pose. And we'll flex the feet so that toes are drawing in towards the shins. Knees still have at least a little bit of a bend here. And it's really your choice if you want to stay on the block or if you want to come onto the floor. For some of us, it might be appropriate to take the block underneath the knees to allow the knees to have that little bit more of a bend. Or if we'd like, we can reach for a belt or a strap or maybe a t-shirt or a towel. And we could use that to assist with this pose as well. So again, a little bit of a bend in the knees, lengthening through the spine. So thinking about that natural curve of the spine, but finding that length. So just like when we were standing in mountain pose, lengthening from the tailbone all the way to the crown of the head, getting a little bit taller. And remembering these can be bent. So our goal here is that length in the spine. So if this is where we feel the greatest sensation or we feel enough sensation here, we can stay just as we are. Or if we want to go a little further, or if the body's asking for a little bit more, we could take the strap, or again, it could be a towel or a shirt, around the bottoms of the feet and finding that inhale, using the exhale to extend forward. So if we're coming forward, thinking about keeping the spine long. So I'm going to show you what we want to avoid. So rather than worrying about rounding down just to get all the way down, we want to think about keeping that integrity in the spine and then only coming forward if we can keep that integrity in the spine. And that could be with or without a strap. We could hold on to the feet. We could have hands on our shins, on our thighs, wherever we're feeling that sensation. So if you're feeling it, you're doing it. We don't need to worry about making our bodies look any particular way. It's about making the poses fit our bodies. And then from here, now we're going to bend the knees. We'll bring hands behind the body, taking feet as wide as our mat, and just letting the knees drop from one side to the other. A little bit of a windshield wiper movement. And if you don't want to bring the knees all the way to the floor, you can bring them down halfway or whatever distance feels good. So we're getting into those hips, thanking them for all the work they've done for us today. And then coming back to center. We'll scoot forward and holding on to the back of one leg, we'll lower down. Or if you'd like, you can bring hands to the floor and turn to one side. Bringing knees into the chest, giving them a little hug, holding on behind the thighs or at the shins. And we can rock from side to side, getting a little bit of a massage from the earth. And if that creates any type of discomfort, then just staying still. Lowering feet down to the floor. We're going to add in an opportunity for a little bit of core work. So you probably noticed that we talk a lot about our abdominals, our core, as we move through the practice. We want to have some emphasis on the core, and we really need a strong core for everything that we do in yoga. So we want to give ourselves a little extra bonus work. We'll bring fingertips behind the ears. Elbows are out to the side. So rather than hugging elbows in, they're out to the side. And with an inhale, we'll let the low back come to the floor, noticing that the hips start to lift away from the ground when we do that. As we exhale, we'll lift the chin and the chest, keeping our gaze up towards the ceiling. So rather than looking at the knees or at the belly, and then we'll inhale down. Exhaling to lift, using the strength of the core to do the work. And then inhaling back down. So we're starting here with just a really standard crunch. And if this is enough, choosing to stay here, or if your body wants a little bit more, we could add on. So maybe lifting feet towards the sky, keeping those knees bent once again, at least a little bit, or if you want, you could bend them some more. Or you can bring those feet back down to the floor. And then from here, just finding what feels good to you. So it might be those feet up towards the sky, or we could add in a bicycle crunch, bringing elbow to opposite knee. Always moving with the breath and with awareness. So inhaling to lower and then exhaling to lift. So whether that's in that regular crunch or up towards the sky with feet lifted, or in this very intentional bicycle crunch. Pausing anytime you need to. Going for quality instead of quantity. So whatever option you're choosing, if you're still moving here with me, we'll do just one more time to each side, or maybe just a couple more repetitions. And then hugging those knees back in, giving ourselves a little bit of a hug. Bringing feet down to the floor. Arms are next to the body. We'll walk feet in towards the glutes. We're going to lift into a bridge pose. So just like we did with our crunch, we're going to inhale, letting the low back press into the earth. And very slowly, one vertebra at a time, we're going to peel the back away from the floor. Feet are once again in line with the hips. We'll hug those inner thighs energetically towards each other. Keeping the belly button drawing in and pressing the feet down into the floor to help lift the hips towards the sky. If you'd like, interlacing hands underneath the body, walking shoulders in underneath the chest. That's going to help us get a little more lift there. Coming onto the toes if that feels appropriate. And then coming out of our bridge, if we've lifted the heels, we'll come back down to the floor. We'll release those arms out to the side. And just as slowly as we came up, we'll lower back down. One vertebrae at a time. Pausing here, allowing the spine to come into neutral. Maybe taking those feet wide once again and adding in some more windshield wipers. And you could stay with this flowing motion if this is feeling good, or if you'd like to turn this into a more passive twist, we'll lift the hips over to the right side, letting the knees drop over to the left side, and then opening those arms wide into a T shape, either looking in the same direction as our knees, or we can turn the chin away from the knees. So knees are going in one direction, and then the belly, the chest, and maybe the chin are going in the opposite direction. Allowing the body to slow down a little bit here.
So again, you could be in this still version of our twist, or you could be going through that flowing version with our windshield wipers. But if you're here with me in this passive twist, we'll make our way out of it. We'll inhale, knees come back to center, pausing there for a moment, letting the spine come back to neutral. And then on our next in-breath, lifting the hips over to the left side of the mat, dropping knees over to the right side. Letting the belly and the chest open to the left, and maybe turning our gaze out towards the left hand, or we can look up to the sky if that feels better to the neck. Noticing as the body starts to slow down, always being mindful and aware of the moment. So if we let our mind start to drift and wander, just coming back to the experience of your body. We'll take 1 or 2 more breaths right here. And then to come out of this, we'll inhale. Knees come back to the sky, maybe shifting our way back into the center of the mat. And then if we do have a block or couch cushion, something nearby, we'll come into a supported version of bridge pose. So we can lift the hips, placing the block or whatever support we have, maybe a rolled up towel or blanket, directly underneath the sacrum, so right above the glutes. So we held an active version of bridge pose just a few moments ago, and now we're in a restorative version, allowing the body to be held and supported. So this can feel really good to just allow ourselves to be held. And you might choose to, from here, if you'd like, maybe extend the left leg, let the heel come to the floor. Now we're getting a nice stretch for the hip flexor muscle. So the hip flexors get really tight from a lot of sitting, or even from that abdominal work we did when we were bringing the knees in or the body towards the knees. That can really create some tightness there. But especially all the sitting that we do can really tighten up those hip flexors, which is the top of the thigh, and even into the low belly. So our psoas muscle comes from the low back, and it crosses the hip on the front, and then it comes into the top of that leg. And a lot of times we might have low back pain that really comes from the hip flexors being tight. So we can stay here for a few moments on one side if that feels good. And again, if that doesn't feel good, you could keep both knees bent. And then we'll bend that left knee, and then switching to the right side. Some of us may even like to extend both legs at the same time. So just choosing whatever feels best to you. As we allow that really nice opening. We'll take 1 or 2 more breaths right here. And bending the right knee to meet the left. So we'll take one more option. So if one side felt really good and you want to go back to that, you can choose that. Or if it feels good staying here with knees bent, you could do that as well. And then our third option is to lift feet towards the sky, coming into a supported version of legs up the wall. Knees can still be bent here if that feels good, or they can be a little bit longer, but at least keeping a little bit of a bend in the knees. And this can feel really nice at the end of the day, especially if we've been on our feet a lot. It's a nice way to reverse the flow of the blood and the lymph. And if we actually are near a wall, we could put our legs up the wall. That's where this pose got its name from. But if you don't have a wall nearby, having the block is a nice way to have a supported version of this pose. And coming out of it anytime that you'd like.
And in fact, if it feels really good, you might want to stay here. I've had some students do final relaxation in this pose. So if that is what you'd like today, maybe choosing to stay here. Or we can bend the knees, bringing feet back down to the floor. Again, option here to stay for final relaxation. Or we can lift our hips, taking that block away, setting it off to the side. Adding in any final movements that the body might need. So that could be bringing those knees back to the chest, or maybe a happy baby with feet towards the sky. Or if there's any other movement your body needs right now. And then slowly, as you're ready, making your way into final relaxation. That could be any of those postures we talked about. Our knees could stay bent, or we could extend the legs long with the feet flopped out to the side, arms out alongside the body with the palms facing up, allowing the fingertips to curl in towards the palms. We can shift, allowing the shoulders to come underneath the body, so we can create a little bit of openness behind the heart. Closing your eyes if that feels good. Allowing the body to feel heavy on the earth. Letting everything slow back down. Coming into our most important pose of the practice. This time when our body assimilates and absorbs all the benefits of the practice. So staying here if you have the time, or if you need to get back into your day, we can begin to wake the body back up, bringing some movements back in, tracing the finger or the thumb over the fingers, maybe wiggling the toes.
Bending the knees and turning to one side into baby pose. Pressing the top hand into the earth as we come into an upright seat. Bringing hands together at the heart. And then inhaling, arms overhead. We'll bring thumbs to the forehead for good thoughts, to the lips for good words, and to the hearts for good intentions. The divine light within me honors the divine light within you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me for this practice today. Have a wonderful day.